Broken chords are an essential exercise for you to learn how to play efficiently. Basically, you can get kind of triads that get broken up, you get arpeggios, you get dominant sevenths and diminished sevenths. Today we're just going to have a look at broken chords, how to play them, some fingering suggestions, and talk a wee bit about how they're built. Okay, the first thing I want to talk about is where do we actually pull a triad from? I don't have any in my pocket, so we need to actually know how to structure them on the piano. So when you have a scale like say C major, basically what we want to do is we want to take the first, the third and the fifth degree of the scale. Now, what that means is we take the first note, which is the root, right? Then the third note, and then the fifth note. And that gives us a root position triad. Some people talk about the first, the third and the fifth. Now the reason for this is, as I said, it's because of the degree, but the first note is the root and then you take a third from the root. And if you take a fifth from the root, that gives you your triad. Or you can build it on intervals of thirds, right? So the C to the E is a third and the E to the G is a third. It's really one of those things, whatever way you find easier. Personally, I like using the degrees of the scales, but you know, again, it's up to yourself. Just before we move on as well, you can also, the way to get the minor of these triads is just basically to flatten the third. You know, so if you have your major, all you need to do is move the middle note down a semitone. That gives you that sort of sad, melancholy sound, all right? Major, minor. It doesn't matter what key you're in. If you do it in F major and just flatten the third, if you do it in the F sharp major and flatten the third, just always, you know, just the first and the fifth stay the same, the third gets flattened and that gives you your minor. The next thing we need to know about, you know, and how to do the sort of broken chord exercises that I'm about to go into is understanding inversions of chords. Now, basically an inversion is just the order that you have the notes in. So previously we were talking about C, E and G. If we play it in that order, where it's a third and then a third, then we have root position. I'll take it down to one hand just to make it easier to follow. If you then take the root note or the bottom note and put that up an octave and move it to here, that gives you your first inversion, right? Now to get second inversion, what you do is you take the bottom note again and you put that up an octave. That gives you your second inversion. And then, well, the thing is, if you take the bottom note there, you get to somewhere that's actually quite familiar. You're actually back in root position here, right? So they're really only, in a three note or a triad, you've only got your root position, your first inversion and your second inversion, all right? And then you get back to root again. And obviously it goes the other way. If you come down the way, you've got root, down to second inversion, down to first inversion, and then back to root again. And obviously the same in the left hand, and it's the same with minors as well. Okay, so before I go into any sort of exercises, if you're finding the information in the video useful so far, please like the video and also subscribe to the channel. That would be really helpful, thanks. The first exercise we're going to do with broken chords is about basically stacks of three notes. So we're just going to take the actual notes of the triad as opposed to, well, we'll add another one in a minute. So what I do with the broken chord is I would take the chord and I break it. Okay, and then what I want to do is just build on that by playing the root and then the first inversion and then the second inversion. So I'll show you what I mean. You've got the root, first inversion, second inversion, and then I'll finish there. Back down. Okay. Of course you can go into more octaves, but I'm just going to cover one today. And you can do the same with the left hand. I would definitely suggest doing them in both hands, just for the sake of, you know, making sure that you don't get one hand stronger than the other. It's a common problem that the left hand can be slightly weaker than the right, or vice versa, depending on, you know, if you're right or left hand dominant. Okay, so that gives us that. Now, the difference between that and a minor one, nothing really. You maybe need to move in and out the keyboard a wee bit more to get onto the black keys. And if you start on a black key as well, I'd probably still end up using the same fingering for all of these exercises, right? So let's have a look at what I would use. So for right hand, I would use 1, 2, 4, 1, 2, 5, 1, 3, 5, 3, and then the same coming back down. Left hand I would use, what would be the best one? So probably 5, 3, 1, 5, 3, 1, 5, 2, 1, 2. It just fits, if you follow that fingering, it fits quite well. But again, this is just a suggestion, you know, everybody's hands are different. I find that the easiest one. The second exercise is just adding one more note to it. So what I want to do is add basically the note that we start on but an octave higher and turn it into a sort of 4-note run for every inversion, and I'll explain what I mean by showing you the piano because my words are rubbish. So we've got, instead of just doing this, I'm going to play the C as well, and then play the first inversion, then the second inversion, then do the same exercise, come back down. Now, what's good about this is you're kind of forcing your hand to just travel a wee bit further across the keyboard. And one thing to remember is when you start to get those bigger stretches, make sure that you're not like keeping your hand like this as you move up and down the keyboard, you know, because that just leads to tension and you'll not be able to control your playing as much. So as you come up, just make sure your fingers are relaxing, okay? And the same on the way back down. Okay, don't try and stay like this. Just because you can reach an octave or whatever you can reach doesn't mean that you should. All right. Now let me just go over fingering for that, and that will wrap things up for us. Okay, so we've got I would use 1, 2, 3, 5, 1, 2, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 5, 1 in the right hand. In the left hand, I would use 5, 3, 2, 1, 5, 4, 2, 1, 5, 3, 2, 1, 5. All right, and then same fingering going back down the way. Well, obviously reverse it because that'd be nuts if you didn't. Okay, so these are the exercises I would recommend to, you know, anybody I was teaching to get going, and I would definitely recommend doing these before you move into arpeggios and then the dominant and diminished sevenths as well. Hopefully you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you again in the future.